I'm Brian Schiff, a 41-year flight instructor, and on the side, I play airline captain. I've done that for about 37 years to support my GA habits. Welcome to the 14th episode of the SCHIFF Show, an educational aviation variety show. During this episode, we'll be discussing a topic that is the culprit in way too many accidents, the weather. But we'll get to that in a second. For now, I'd like to just announce some exciting changes for this year if you haven't seen our show yet. This year, we have some new features. We've got a new game show feature where you can participate. If you logged on early enough, you would have seen the instructions at the beginning, but we'll go over those again before we start toward the end of the show. We also have prizes we're going to give away to our highest scores. We've got some great prizes to give away and compiling more as we go. Grand prizes will be given away at Oshkosh to our highest winners as well. Also, a new thing that we've got that's really exciting is you can complete a flight review using the SCHIFF Show. With each episode, you can complete a phase of wings, and completing a phase of wings qualifies for a flight review. So look for instructions on the episode page under Earn Wings Credit and Flight Review to explain the process, but also just to show you where to go. When you go to the main page for each episode, you'll see Earn Wings Credits Flight Review link on the right side. Click on that, and it's going to pop open a new window that shows you has a link to go to the flight review page. And when you open that up, it's going to give you the basic instructions with the links to complete 2 more quizzes. So you'll complete a quiz for the episode you're watching. You'll complete 2 quizzes for the course resources that we put in the course materials. The beauty of this is you don't have to go to the FAA Safety Team website at all. It's a one-stop shop here on the schiffshow.tv website. And also, we complete the 3 flight credits that are described down there with a flight instructor, and then click on the instructor for CFI completion there. Click on the link for your CFI. We'll come up with some more detailed cards on how to complete this. But right now, the first episode that we have to do that is our episode 12, December of last year's episode. Right now is all set to go. So you can go to the 12th episode of the SCHIFF Show and click on that link and complete a phase of wings and complete your flight review. So that's really exciting. Tonight, I'd like to welcome our special guest, Greg Reverdiau. He's an aviation professional with a background in aviation aeronautical science. He's got a master's degree in aviation human factors, and he's trained hundreds of thousands of pilots through his creation, Pilot Institute. And when he said hundreds of thousands, I thought he misspoke. I said, "Did you mean thousands?" He said, "No, hundreds of thousands." And Pilot Institute offers comprehensive online ground schools for airplane and drone pilots with expertly designed curricula. And the visual lessons, the quiz banks, the visuals are fantastic. The graphics are out of this world and modern. And a pass the test on or your money back policy, guaranteed for each of the courses as the private pilot and the Part 107 programs. His program uses modern technology, graphics, and data-driven training philosophy, applying them to real-world accident analysis to make every flight safer. Greg, he's a co-founder and the head of training at Pilot Institute. Welcome, Greg. I'm really thrilled to have you.
Well, thanks for having me, Brian. It's kind of an honor, actually, to be here. It's really exciting.
Well, thanks a lot for being here. And I was excited to see some of the programs that you've got at Pilot Institute, especially at NAFI Summit when I got to try out your virtual reality pilot training simulator. And we'll have a link to that. There's a link in our course resources. And if you've got a set of Meta virtual reality goggles, you can try it. And it's free, right?
Yep. Yeah, it is free. And we keep adding more and more things. So we have another module coming out very soon with a cool engine display, so you can learn more about the engine and learn about systems.
Well, that's fantastic. I look forward to seeing that. And a lot of students don't ever get to see the components of the engine, or, you can go play Microsoft Flight Simulator and you can go do X-Plane Simulator, but what you can't do is explore the airplane like you can with your virtual reality simulator. And I really found it fantastic. You're actually clicking on things and working with it, and you can move around and look at things, look at the different parts of the airplane, see the flight controls moving and everything. I just think it's fantastic. And again, there's a link. If you have a Meta VR headset, it's free to you. Go download it. I encourage you to check it out. So without further ado, let's jump into tonight. We're going to be talking about weather, and the main topics we'll discuss are pre-flight planning, expectation bias. They're going to come out of this accident. We're going to look at changing plans, systems knowledge is a biggie. We'll look at some technology, and we'll look at for-flight radar and a little bit about NexRad and talk about that as well. So just like normal, tonight's episode will have these 5 sections, and we'll jump right in and get into the accident review. But rather than tell the whole story, Greg has done a great job putting together a fantastic video that does it for us. So I'm going to go ahead and start with this video. You can watch Pilot Institute's recreation and explanation of this accident that happened in July of 2009. It was a Cessna 421 that lost control offshore in the Gulf near Tampa, trying to get into Tampa, and encountered a thunderstorm and flew where the weather wasn't a few minutes ago, but where it was at that time. And well, rather than tell the whole story myself, I'll play the video.
On a routine cross-country flight, an experienced pilot made a series of decisions that turned a smooth journey into one of sheer terror.
6-7 Delta, we're in a mayday, mayday, mayday. 6-7 Delta, Jax, can you hear me now? He said he was upside down. I got you.
What happened to November 4467 Delta? It's just before 10 a.m. on Wednesday, July 8th, 2009, and the summer heat is already stifling in McKinney, Texas. A company-owned Cessna Golden Eagle 421C taxis to the runway at Collin County Regional Airport. The destination? Tampa, Florida. On friends and colleagues, the company president, the commercially rated company pilot, another employee, and 2 others. While the primary purpose is business, a trade show in Tampa, this flight is also about friendship and celebration, with plans to mark one passenger's birthday. While most of the flight is expected to be smooth, the thunderstorm stretching from the Gulf eastward posed a serious concern for the pilot. When filing his IFR flight plan that morning, he informed the briefer of his intent to deviate around the weather. With nearly 2,000 hours of flight time under his belt, he is confident in his ability to navigate the challenges ahead. Also, 4467 Delta is no ordinary Cessna. It's been upgraded with winglets, spoilers, vortex generators, and high-performance engines. The pressurized twin almost seems like a mini airliner. The advanced onboard weather tools, radar, storm scope, and an XM weather satellite receiver are precisely what the pilot needs to see and avoid any convective activity. At this point, the airplane is right on the edge of the largest convective area. The pilot must make a choice: avoid the weather and divert, or proceed. If the pilot decides to proceed, he will be unable to visually avoid storms. Instead, he will have to depend on onboard weather equipment. The pilot of 4467 Delta presses onward. At 2:11 p.m., ATC instructs the airplane to descend to 17,000 feet. The pilot reports a smooth ride and light rime icing, just as expected from the PIREPs, before requesting a further descent to 15,000 feet. 16 minutes later, 67 Delta requests a deviation around an area of moderate precipitation.
Number 67 Delta, Jacksonville Center, scattered, moderate, isolated, extreme precip between you and Tampa. Let me know what kind of headings you're going to need, please.
Yeah, for 67 Delta, can we get a right of course, probably heading 200?
67 Delta, that's approved.
At 2:41, ATC clears the aircraft lower in preparation for getting them back on the published arrival.
Number 67 Delta, cross 1515 north of Darbs at 5,000.
Yeah, roger that. 15 north of Darbs at 5,000, 67 Delta.
At this point, 67 Delta is just over 50 miles from Tampa, and up to now, the flight has gone smoothly. But 5 minutes later, the pilot alerts ATC of a serious issue.
Yeah, Center 67 Delta, we're in quite a bit of turbulence. Is there any chance of you can give us some directions?
On their radar, the controller sees the aircraft right at the edge of the precipitation and heading for clear air.
67 Delta, looks like straight ahead is the best way out there. Not straight ahead for about 2 minutes. You should be clearing it all on the south side.
13 seconds pass before the pilot transmits more troubling news. He is losing control of the airplane.
67 Delta, we're getting a 2,000 foot descent here.
67 Delta, would you like to turn around and go opposite direction, turn around and go back to where you came from?
Yes, sir.
67 Delta, roger, reverse course.
Jack Center's radar shows 67 Delta attempting a right turn before suddenly transmitting a plea for help.
67 Delta, we're in a mayday, mayday, mayday. We're upside down. My God, hurry.
Seconds later, ATC loses radar contact with the airplane, and no further radio transmissions from them are heard.
You better scramble whatever you scramble, because I think they hit the ground.
We're going, sir.
Investigators soon discovered two distinct debris fields in the Gulf of Mexico, indicating an in-flight breakup around 6,000 feet. There were no survivors. This was a clear sign that the aircraft had encountered forces far beyond its design limits. Now, investigators needed to determine how and why this happened. A review of the radar data answered how. During the right turn to escape the situation, the pilot inadvertently entered a storm cell of extreme intensity. Satellite data revealed that the area contained rapidly growing cumulonimbus clouds in their mature stage, the most powerful and dangerous phase of a thunderstorm. With the clarity of hindsight, it's easy to state the obvious. A Cessna 421 should never have been near such powerful storms. But why did the pilot get into this deadly situation? 67 Delta was equipped with advanced weather tools. However, these tools have limitations that may have led the pilot straight into the heart of the storm. First, let's look at the onboard weather radar. Weather radar allows pilots to see areas of precipitation in real time, color-coded by intensity. However, the device can be tricky to use correctly. One limitation is called precipitation attenuation. In heavy rain, the radar beam weakens as it travels through the storm, making the precipitation look lighter than it is. Very dense cells can create a radar shadow, a blind spot that hides the weather beyond it. This could easily lead a pilot to believe they're flying into a manageable situation, only to be met with the full force of the storm. Distance attenuation further complicates things. Weather radar on board smaller aircraft is most effective within 40 to 80 nautical miles. Beyond this range, the radar's accuracy diminishes, giving a false sense of security about what lies ahead. Then there's the challenge of adjusting the radar tilt. Tilt is the radar's angle above or below the horizon. Incorrect tilt settings can make storms appear weaker or farther away than they are. For a single pilot flying IFR, managing this while under a heavy workload is a lot to handle. Now, we can't say whether the pilot of 67 Delta was using the weather radar correctly or at all. His transmissions only mention the use of XM satellite weather radar. And XM radar has its own limitations, most notably a delay of up to 15 minutes in the data. This means the storm you see on the screen could have already moved or intensified. And just like the conventional radar on board November 4467 Delta, XM is unable to accurately detect turbulence. So what if the pilot's XM radar data was 15 minutes old when he began encountering severe turbulence? Here's what he would have seen. A cell with moderate to heavy precipitation straight ahead with a gap to the right. Perhaps he thought he was entering the cell to his left and needed to change course to the right. But the actual conditions, as seen here, were much different. The clearest area was straight ahead, with heavy echoes to the left and right. What might have looked like a gap to the pilot was actually a mature storm cell. Beyond the technical limitations, human factors played an equally important role. Expectation bias may have influenced the pilot's decisions. Other aircraft, large airliners, were successfully navigating the storms. Despite being a high-performance twin, 67 Delta wasn't an airliner. Big jets can stand more extreme forces and get through bad weather quicker. Also, as the storm worsened, ATC first suggested continuing straight ahead. That was the correct choice. But then they commanded a course reversal, a well-intentioned recommendation, but one that may have sealed the aircraft's fate. The NTSB concluded that the accident was caused by the pilot's decision to operate into a known area of adverse weather, leading to the inadvertent penetration of a severe thunderstorm, a subsequent loss of control, and in-flight breakup. As aviators, we must know when to trust our instruments, when to question them, and when to turn back. The pressure to keep going is always there, but resisting it can be the most important decision we make.
Well, that was a great review of that accident, and that was only a portion of it. I've edited it to shorten it so to the pertinent parts, so it doesn't take up so much time in our seminar. But if you want to see the full video, you can go to the Pilot Institute's webpage and see it on there, or the YouTube channel. Is that right?
Yeah, we have an airplane channel. So we have 2 channels on YouTube. Make sure you go to the airplane channel. And we have a few of them, actually. We have, I think, 6 or 7 of them. And we just recorded one this week, another one that we're going to be publishing pretty soon.
Well, I love that you're using your platform and your technology to evaluate and study accidents and use them for the lessons that they give us, because that's exactly what we're all trying not to do. We're all trying not to get into an accident. And we as pilots look at an accident. We want to know what happened. We like hearing about it. And we have this, it's not a curiosity like you look at a car accident, but it's more of a, hey, this could happen to me. If it happened to that pilot, this could happen to me. What are the lessons we can take away from that? So I love the fact that you're making videos like that of accidents, and I look forward to seeing more of those as well. But we'll look into some of the lessons that can be learned from this one. As an overview of this accident, the pilot was aware of the weather near the destination. The controller warned the pilot of the weather. The pilot admitted to seeing the weather on his XM. And then the pilot entered the area where the weather wasn't a while ago. Unfortunately, in this case, the pilot voluntarily and knowingly flew his light airplane into an area of strong thunderstorm activity without having anywhere near the minimum safety clearances from thunderstorms demanded by such an operation, which is what the AIM tells us about. We'll talk about that a little bit more. I think he got a little bit of, confidence by the fact that airliners were getting through just fine. And of course, he's flying a little mini airliner with arguably at the time better information than the airliners had, except weather radar, which he did have, and it seems wasn't looking at. He used his NexRad radar in a misguided attempt to thread the needle between thunderstorms, which is not what it's for and not what you should ever do. And of course, he operated his aircraft carelessly and recklessly by doing this. And we want to say that we would never do that, but yet this keeps happening. It happens over and over again, several times every year. Pilots are straying into thunderstorms. So I want to emphasize that, first of all, the NexRad should not be used. And I'm sure that you guys cover that and emphasize it in your classes, Greg,
Yes.
What the use of NexRad, how to use it, what its weaknesses are.
Yeah, all the different types of radars that you can have access to. And then, of course, there are limitations. And the sad part about this specific accidents is that they made it almost all the way to the end. At the very end, when they decide to turn around, that decision right there kills everyone on board, all 5 people on board, right. Because they were right there. They were going to get out and talk to the controller and said, the controller asked, you want to come, you want to turn around? And they said, yeah. And they were at the end of it. And it's just such a sad situation.
I think when a pilot gets into a situation like that where it's really bad, if the controller said, "Can I offer you a watermelon?" you'd say yes. You'd say yes to anything because you just want to take help, and it's like a lifeline out there that really is not able to help you do what you've got to do. Pilots need to stay clear of weather by themselves. Now, I will say that the controllers in Florida do a great job. If you ask them for the help, they can do it actually pretty well with the weather. They're quite used to that. But in any fact, he had the equipment on board to avoid it and didn't use it. So let's dive into some of the procedures first that, and when I say procedures, it's what the FAA gives us, the guidance in the FARs or the AIM and stuff like that. So let's start with, we'll go in the order of a flight. So pre-flight planning, obviously, part 91-103 says that a pilot will, before beginning a flight, become familiar with all available information concerning that flight, and that has to include, for a flight IFR or not in the vicinity of an airport, so if you're leaving the pattern area, that you obtain weather reports and forecasts. But we go above and beyond that. I mean, what do you teach your students to do to prepare, Greg?
Yeah, it's obviously doing a full pre-flight and weather briefing before you go. Obviously, for flight these days is a great way to do this. But we spend a lot of time on aviationweather.gov. That website, if you haven't looked at it in several months, I think about 6 months ago, they made a major overhaul of the website, and it's amazing. You can put your entire route of flight. Yeah, it's a great platform.
Yeah, it was when the area forecast went away. Remember the big thick paragraph that said that
Yes.
every word was abbreviated, like from southern Indiana, area of low pressure, blah, and no pilot ever got to the end of that paragraph.
No. And now it's all graphical. They have amazing graphical displays. They actually have a map where you can basically turn on and off whatever overlay you want on top. You can make it as complex as you want, or as light as you want. But there's so much information, and also the fact that you can put your route of flight in there and visualize it immediately. And see how the weather is going to change over time. So we spend a lot of time teaching students how to do that. I have a kind of an interesting story. My uncle was a captain for Northwest Airline years and years ago. He was a 747 captain, and he gave me my first logbook. He's the one who actually gave me the aviation bug, and in it he wrote a note, and the only note that he ever wrote was, make sure you check the weather before you go. And he underlined before, make sure you know all about the weather before you go. And this was the only thing that he wanted to kind of, share with me how important that weather information was. And especially back in the days, when he was flying, probably far less information available in the airplane to make a decision.
Yeah. And even that's good advice. At the airline level, we look at that and go, well, we have to go anyway, so I don't want to look at the weather because it's just going to scare me. That's not true. Not true at all. I look at the weather, and when I'm flying down there in a jet, of course, we know that we're going to get delays. We're going to upset our passengers because we're spreading. All the airplanes have to be much further apart so that they can do all the deviating that they're going to do and go take a really wide berth around all of that weather as well. So, there's no record or evidence that the pilot in this accident, obtained a formal weather briefing from Flight Service Station or from, and I'm going to use an old term, DUATs, because that was back when this accident happened. That's what they were using at the time. It is presumed, however, that he did obtain the required weather briefing from another source because the following recorded conversation, as you can read on the screen, between the pilot and Flight Service Station specialist with whom he filed his IFR flight plan to Tampa. And the conversation verifies that he knew about the weather that he would encounter and that it was convective activity along his route of flight, as you can see by looking at this. The imagery that was available at the time was the weather going down there. I mean, I would look at that and go, 10 years from now, it's not going to matter that I didn't make it to Tampa. But I think there was a lot of pressure on this flight with all the friends and the celebration that was going to happen. So we tend toward favoring toward the go instead of favoring the stop when conditions dictate otherwise. So
yeah, and the weather, by the way, that you see in the video is the actual weather that we got from the NTSB report. So it is not something that we made ourselves. It's the actual weather that was on that specific flight.
Oh wow! And this chart was issued I got this from the archives maintained by Plymouth State University, and there's no way the pilot could not have known about these prior to his departure from McKinney. I think he just felt like he had the equipment on board to deal with it when he got there and pick his way through it. And boy, there's nothing I don't like. There's nothing I like less than picking my way through a line of weather. It was actually probably good material for another show, but it was while picking my way through a line of weather like that I had a smoke emergency inside the cockpit, and we had to shut down everything, including my radar. And I'll tell you that story another time.
It's always like that. It happens, right? When you make the wrong decision, then something happens that really puts you on your toes. Exactly. So another thing here was expectation bias. Now, I think you mentioned in the video that there was some expectation bias, and I'll tell you what I have to say about expectation bias, and then maybe you can tell me what you think this pilot did. Have you ever heard what you expected to hear from ATC only to realize later that it's not what they actually said? You always turn right on kilo every time you taxi out, but today you had to go left and you just didn't grab that. Your brain fills in the gaps based on our experience. And like here, if you expect to see red, yellow, and green, yellow, and then a red light, and then for some reason you saw green, yellow, and then it went back to green again, we all expect based on what we're experiencing. And our experiences dictate our brains fill in the gaps, and we see what we're used to seeing. And I think taxiing is one of the common places for that as well.
expectation bias is the tendency to see or hear or interpret information as we expect it to be instead of what it is really happening. And the consequence is that the conflicting cues are ignored, or we find a way to explain them away rather than actually investigate what we see or don't see. And this is a common theme here, is but I swear I saw 3 green lights. And it's a good technique to look away and then back at your landing gear if you were doing a gear check for the 3 green check. I don't know, do you have any techniques to combat that? Like when you say gear down, maybe you check it 12 times?
3 green, no red, confirm. This is what I always say. And I say that loud even if I have nobody else in the cockpit and I confirm. But 3 green, no red, confirm. And even when I fly a fixed gear, I still say it because it's part of the flow in the checklist. And even it's not there in my head, I always think about it. That's part of, so I don't forget.
That's a great habit pattern.
Yeah, get your habits, but you know that expectation bias is even when you continue to try to make the same decision despite the evidence that you're being shown. So it's okay to fall into the expectation bias as long as you realize that you need to make a correction. And I think in this case it didn't happen. He really wanted to go. Everybody else was going, and expecting something different, but contrary to the evidence, and it just kept on going. I'm conflicted sometimes on expectation bias because we tell the students, especially new students, on radio communication, for example, you're brand new at Radiocom and you're sitting there and you have this stage fright, right? Because the controller is going to talk to you and you want to make sure you read back everything correctly, especially on the taxi instruction. You were talking about this. So we kind of tell them, hey, what do you expect? What do you think is going to happen when they get on the radio? Because then you can start to be kind of ready for it. But then on the other hand, that creates expectation bias because now they're ready for something, and if they don't hear it correctly, they're going to do the wrong thing. So I'm kind of torn on this. You really have to understand that it's happening to you. That's the human thing. You have to understand these limitations of your brain and of yourself, and know that this can happen.
It's very true. And I think it's a great tool to teach students initially when they're first learning how to do the radios about that expectation, but then to follow up later with, okay, now that we've got that, you're good on the radios, you know that they're going to hear. And when you are ready for takeoff, it's only going to be one of 3 things, right? Hold short, line up and wait, or clear for takeoff. So, but do pay attention to which one of those 3 it is. It's very important, obviously. So I think it's a good tool to teach a student what to expect, but then follow up, I think, with later on with, I think, what expectation bias is all about and how to combat that. The cognitive mechanics, the brain uses mental shortcuts to save workload, especially so your work doesn't have to, your brain doesn't as hard. I know mine is not capable of working very hard, but when you're stressed or fatigued, we lean more heavily on those shortcuts. In fact, it's kind of, I think a lot of people refer to that as going back to second nature or muscle memory. And the more something has gone right in the past, the more convincing the expectation becomes. And that's what you got to watch out for.
That's a big one. And I think, this happened probably in this case as well. Hard to tell, but think about it this way. If you've done it 20 times and you've flown through some sort of thunderstorms and you made it out alive and you made it out okay, then the next time that you're faced with this, you're like, well, you know what? I did it 20 times and it's probably going to be okay. Well, maybe you were lucky 20 times and you should not have made it out okay every time. But that comes from that. That's that mechanism, that automation. Right. And now you lower your standards because you've made it out okay every single time.
Yeah, exactly. And that's very important to watch out for that. Don't just, pay attention in the class and go, I've seen myself doing that, and then tolerate more and more of a lower standard every time. Pay attention to it, fix it, and nip it in the bud is the important thing. The markers, I was going to say, this is why they say that higher time pilots sometimes can be more dangerous because over time they've been okay for so long that they can end up lowering their standards. And that's a very good point. That's something that I try to watch out for. Now that I've broken 1,000 hours, it's something that I really try to watch out for. But you're right. It gets worse. So you complacency and sets in. The longer you do it, the longer it goes right. I've had a few things go wrong, so I've learn to be on my toes, but be aware of the certain times when it's really going to be more of a factor, like the same route, same runway every time, same controller. That's a red flag. Also, night VMC, visual approaches, intersection departures, complex taxi routes. And when you're fatigued and or time pressured, those are times when this is really going to rear its head, or when you have get-theritis, when your brain is wanting to confirm something. So,
Yep.
In any event, let's move on to flying in turbulence. The advice given here now, we can only touch the tip of the iceberg on a lot of this stuff in 1 hour, obviously. But the course materials we've provided to you in the course materials section of this program, again, there are 2 more quizzes, and you can get 3 wings credits for it just for that. But I'll refer you to that when you see course resources for more information. I'll expand on a lot more. I'll have materials in there that will expand on a lot more of what we're talking about. But just for flying in turbulence, some of the tip of the iceberg stuff, you want to stay below VA maneuvering speed, but that's also a misnomer. You want to be well below that, not right at or below, because you'll hit 15, 20 knot gusts that could take you right above that. And also VA that's published if in your airplane, if you don't see a range, that's for your max gross weight. And a good rule of thumb is to reduce the VA that's published, the max VA speed, by 2 knots for every 100 pounds you are below max gross weight. And that's in light aircraft, light training aircraft, obviously. Don't get anywhere near VNO, red line speed, obviously. Another thing that my dad taught me to do is when and that's in his book on the turbulence chapter, which is in the course resources, the chapter of that book, is to push on both rudder pedals at the same time, and it'll stop the rudder from kind of moving around. And it actually does calm down the aircraft in turbulence, because that's the part sticking furthest away from the center of gravity. That helps as well. I've also heard, ride the waves. Don't try to hold your altitude. You want to hold your attitude. So let the altitude vary, ride the waves. You're going to go up and down. Airspeed is important, and the attitude of the airplane is important. You want to try to avoid turning, like in this case, our guy turned around. That adds more load to the aircraft, right? I mean, straight through. And we're even taught at the airline, our procedures for turbulence air penetration is to continue straight ahead. That's the shortest way out.
Increases your stall speed as well, so you have more of a chance to go in there. Obviously, this accident, they exceeded the structural limits of the aircraft, so the aircraft actually disintegrated in flight, and so they went way beyond all of that. More than likely, as a result, I would think, of a stall, because at one point I think the last communication, they said that they're upside down, and so they've probably went into a stall spin and then couldn't get out of it and broke the aircraft.
Exactly. Yeah, good point. And it must have been a lot of load to pull the airplane apart like that. And I just can't imagine what that would feel like. I wouldn't want to feel it. Thunderstorms should scare us. You should stay away from them, because they are, turbulence is always associated with thunderstorms. I think I went to an accident there. I skipped a slide, I think. There we go. Yeah, so they're the most violent threat to aviation safety, a thunderstorm is, which is why pilots, particularly those who fly small airplanes, must give them a wide berth at all times. I mean, even the airliners and the jets, we give them a wide berth. The turbulence associated with them can be so severe that it becomes impossible for a pilot to maintain control of the airplane, which is obviously what happened here. In any event, the AIM gives us some guidance. The FAA Aeronautical Information Manual says that there's no useful correlation between the external visual appearance of a thunderstorm and the severity or amount of turbulence or hail within them. The visible thunderstorm cloud is only a portion of the turbulent system, whose updrafts and downdrafts often extend far beyond the visible storm cloud. So severe turbulence can be expected up to 20 miles from the severe storm, and you need to keep a distance from the clouds. The AIM recommends 10 nautical miles away on the upwind side of the thunderstorm and 20 nautical miles in the downwind quadrant. So if you can't get between a cell by 40 miles with a 40-mile gap, then you have no business going in between them. You're asking for it.
Yeah, 20 miles is what we did when I trained in Florida. It was the bare minimum 20 miles away from the storm.
Yeah, and there's a good reason for that. I actually hit hail out in the clear air. The hail was being thrown, and we didn't see it, but we heard it when it hit. And just some quickies. If you get yourself into one, turn your lights full bright. The 727 had a thunderstorm switch, and you'd put the switch on. Now I'm talking. Yes, I flew an airplane that's in the Smithsonian now. Yeah, it had a thunderstorm switch. You put it on, and it turns all the lights in the cockpit full bright. Because when you get a flash of light inside the clouds where it's dark, it's going to shut down your pupils, and everything is going to be really dark. So all the lights on for that. You know, I don't know. Do you guys give? I know you know, having been in Florida, what kind of advice do you give for thunderstorms in training other than the 20 miles?
Don't get anywhere near. And then, of course, as you get closer, if it gets bumpy, get out before you can't see anything. Now, sometimes the tough part is getting into IFR and then not knowing that you're getting into a thunderstorm cloud. But that's where, you know, reading all your information ahead of time, getting all your weather ahead of time, and staying on top of it. But yeah, at the first indication, this guy, if you look at the weather, they went in there for a very long time before they decided to turn around at the last minute. That should have been a turnaround from the get-go. Once you get bumped around, that's a no-go. You come back. So yeah, embedded thunderstorms are scary. If you don't have onboard weather radar, you have no business going in it. He had it. I don't think he was using it. And this, I can't emphasize this enough, and I don't know why we're still having these accidents, but the next rad is good for pre-flight planning. It's good for long range, you know, planning for the weather, but it is not good for tactical avoidance of close-in avoidance of thunderstorms. The radar is better for that because you're seeing live heavy precipitation, and you just stay out of it with that radar. I don't think the pilot in this case was using it for that. So it's very unfortunate. Well, let's talk about some techniques, since we kind of started that already. And back to pre-flight planning, because it's important. I think that we covered that. I think you talked about the website, and I'd like to, you know, we'll have that up here, and I got it on a slide coming up. But anything else that I think if you look at his courses, this is on your website, pilotinstitute.com. You cover a lot of pre-flight stuff, I would think, as well in these courses. Yep. Yeah, and we did a video on our YouTube channel specifically about aviationweather.gov when it was updated. So if you want to see the latest, I can't speak good enough about that website. It used to be not great, but I think now it's an amazing tool that I use in conjunction with 4Flight. Actually, I don't use just 4Flight. I use both of them to get data now.
Right. I like that you can take that time slider, and this is the website. Here's a URL and the QR for it. But you can take that website, and you can look at the past radar, but you can also take this time slider and look forward, and it'll show you what the forecast is going to be for precipitation, the forecast for icing, the forecast for visibilities, the forecast for what the ceilings are going to be, and you can just slide that time wherever you need it. I highly encourage people as well to go check that out. Aviationweather.gov, and it's GFA, it's graphical forecast for aviation. That's the part we're talking about.
And the thing to emphasize is, you know, it's okay to stay another day. We've covered so many. I think, like I said, we've done about half a dozen of these accident investigations, and almost every time a night at the hotel would have saved the day. We had a guy taking off in Wisconsin, I think, or somewhere up north, where he had just loads of ice on the aircraft. He went to the store to broom off the ice, and then bought some alcohol at the store to put on the aircraft. This was a PC-12, I think, large aircraft, and then ended up killing most of his family and several generations of the family. I think it was 8 people on board that died because of that, when you could have stayed one more night. Another one where the same thing, they were trying to leave after a baseball game or a basketball game, and really just trying to make it home when they should have stayed one more day, and then just disappeared. So yeah, it's okay. It's okay to delay your flight by one more night.
Yeah, I think that's something. I have more stories about cancellations, delays, where I've had to spend the night somewhere. Even in the FBO, I've spent the night in a light airplane before, because I'm just like, I'd rather be on the ground, you know, wishing I was in the sky, than up in the sky wishing I was on the ground. And those things should scare you. You should not be brave about a lot of these things. If your hair is raising on the back of your neck, you need to listen to it and maybe not continue the flight. Be willing to change plans, just like you said. I think Jeff Simon, my good friend, said he always carries a bag full with a change of clothes and toiletries. That way he can't use the excuse that, well, I don't have what I need to stay the night, so I need to get home. No, he's got everything he needs right there to stay one night. I think that was a great idea for a survival kit, not just for what you need in survival, but for what you need to help make a decision to stay. So
Yep, I like that. I'm going to use that again. I really like that.
Yeah, I like it as well. Well, moving on to technology, which is a big part, I think played a very big role in this accident. With what technology this pilot had, and back then it was better than what we had at the airlines. Now we have some fantastic stuff, because we have connectivity now and we have iPads and all that stuff. But most emphasized to us is the fact that we really need to use the weather radar. The external sources are, XM or FISB, which is coming in through the ADS-B in, the flight service station before we leave or even en route, or ATC can be a great resource for weather. They have a lot better capability of looking at weather now than they ever used to have. However, they have that, and that's for basically traffic flow management. Their job is to, keep the safe and orderly flow of air traffic. Their job is not to keep you and me out of the weather. Don't count on ATC to do that. It is your job as a pilot to know where the weather is and avoid it. But know that if you get into something that was unforecast, that you can ask for help. And I don't know any controller that wouldn't want to help you with anything like that.
Agreed. There was one story that there was one story that I talk about all the time, because there's so many segments to it. There's so many learning lessons from it, but it's this dentist or doctor who's in the Northeast, and he has a Piper Arrow, takes off with full tanks. You're probably familiar with it, and then ends up going from airport to airport, trying to find some minimums that are above minimums, and talks to a controller at an Air Force base. Yeah. And they turned him down. They said, well, only if you declare an emergency, and he doesn't declare an emergency, and ends up crashing. At the end, he declares an emergency and crashes 1 mile short, I think, of the runway. And it's such a tragic event. Again, weather related, again, decision making related, and let's stop having those and talking. Yeah,
that was Dover, Delaware. I remember he had trouble getting in, so he went to an alternate, had trouble there. He shot another approach. And he wound up like 5.5 hours, and then he's overflying Dover, Delaware, and he looks down, can see it. He asked the controller, "Hey, there, I see a runway. Can I land there?" And she said, "No, not unless it's an emergency." Well, you know what? If you've been 5.5 hours in a Piper Arrow,
it's an emergency.
You got an emergency, and the AIM actually tells us to declare the emergency before it becomes dire, before it becomes, you're in a catastrophe. You don't have to wait for the engine to quit to declare that emergency. You can what's the word I'm looking for? Preclude that by declaring the emergency and getting on the ground before that happens. So
he was too polite in this case, but that's another great example of weather related crashes that should not have happened.
Right. NEXRAD is basically it's weather radar imagery networked, Doppler radar sites, and data is all comes from all the different locations and is kind of stitched together like into a single mosaic. So when you see a time snap up there, like you see the timestamp that when the radar, when that image came to your airplane, that's not necessarily when they took the picture. And all the pictures might have been taken at different times, slightly different times, and then stitched together. And it takes a few minutes for them to do that and then send it to the airplane. So by the time it gets to the airplane, it's already a few minutes old. And then it only gets to the airplane 5 minutes or 20 minutes, depending on what kind of service you're using. This is not good for close-in tactical, for sure, but it is good information for planning. The common errors are, treating it like it's real-time weather. And this pilots are crashing airplanes today still because they're doing that, and then using it for that close-in tactical weather avoidance and misreading some of the reflectivity products. There's some errors in radar. Sometimes weather will attenuate. It can't get through the weather and it won't see the weather on the other side. That happens sometimes. So you need to know the limitations of that and when it is working and when it's not. Like sometimes you'll see it spiking. I don't know what causes that. I'm sure someone watching this knows, but you'll see a big spike and that's not precipitation in a big long line. It's some kind of issue, phenomenon with the radar. So.
Well, and so also if you get it through ADS-B, sometimes the weather might be too far to actually get good information. I had that one time coming back from Denver, and there was some weather over Flagstaff, and of course there's a lot of very high mountains over Flagstaff and near Denver as well, of course. But that whole line, I was like, how am I going to avoid this? I was in a Diamond DA40, so I couldn't climb super high if I needed to, and I ended up making it and being able to go over that area. But I kept looking for the most recent weather information, talking to the controller and seeing, what can I get for information as this develops. And this was after a very long flight. So all these things get in your head after you've done so many of these accident case studies. Man, it's right there. You're always thinking about it. I don't want to be the next accident case study. So yeah, it's a tough one.
I think the most up-to-date weather you can get is PIREPs. You get from other airplanes. You can ask ATC, has anybody been through here? What are the tops? Has anybody reported the tops? Or maybe there's an airliner climbing out of an airport down below, and they can ask that airliner, hey, can you give us a tops report when you're climbing out? But the NEXRAD, all the devices that give us this kind of NEXRAD radar imagery have a warning in them. And the AIM warns you as well with the warning that you can see on the screen. Not to use this. And I think it's even going to be one of the answers to the quiz questions. I just don't know how much we can emphasize this. And I don't know if it's people watching this program, you probably all know, or but there are people out there, they're out there who are using their NEXRAD, and it is really compelling. I've even had trouble with this. When you see a big red blob in front of you, you want to turn. When you look at that, if I'm near weather, we turn our NEXRAD imagery off and go straight to the radar, because the NEXRAD is irrelevant when you're close in to weather. It's historical radar data that's not going to help you. Yeah.
Yeah, and in that case, by the way, I don't know if people noticed that, but there was radar on board available. We don't know if they used it. The investigation wasn't able to determine, but radar was available as equipment on board, and it looks like they did rely on NEXRAD instead.
There have been many accidents like that with a perfectly good radar, and a lot of people think it's prettier, it looks better, it's got to be more accurate, it's digital, it's modern, it must be better than radar. But no, the radar is bouncing. It's giving you actual real-time information, but there's almost a form of art to doing it. It's like doing an ultrasound of a baby. You got to know what to look for. You need some training on it.
Yeah. Yep. And by the way, I don't remember if we're going to talk about that piece, but if they use the one on board, there's also attenuation of the radar signal. So this was such a bunch of thick cells in front of each other that they may not have been able to see what was next on the radar, because there were just so many of them, because the signal can't penetrate through that big cell that's right in front of them. So there are so many things that could have happened. They were just in the wrong place, should have turned around from the get-go.
Yeah, that's entirely possible. I know that when I use the radar in small airplanes, it's not as powerful in the bigger airplane. You don't see as much attenuation as you do in light aircraft with a smaller dish as well, and less powerful radar. It's a very good point. ForeFlight, has some limits also, and this was interesting. You pointed this out to me, that the two different radars that are on ForeFlight, and on the left side is the radar classic, what is on the menu, and then on the left side and the right side is just ForeFlight radar. Note that there are some selections for XM on there also as well, for all the other inputs that you can have external. And there's the snow, different, with the two different sources of radar, what the intensities of snow look like. And it paints it differently. The different intensities do look different on these. When you go to the ForeFlight book, it actually, in the pilot guide, it actually says that radar, it tells you what the radar is. It's an internet-based composite, blah, blah, blah. It tells you all the definitions, and I'm just going to put them up here. But the two that I'm really curious about, is kind of funny, is radar and radar classic. We have those two available on the top of the menu. And look at the two different definitions. One is an internet-based composite radar layer that offers timely updates, smooth graphics, and a representation of the extent of the coverage. The other is an internet-based composite radar layer that can be used as an alternative to the newer radar layer.
Wow. Yeah, I actually didn't even know. I never seen that definition, but man, that's clear as mud.
Exactly. So if I try to put that into perspective, the radar layer utilizes internet data and advanced computing technologies to quickly update and load imagery. It uses weather vector graphics to generate pixel-free images, and it looks more cartoony, but it's also smoother contouring, especially at close navigation, so it's less pixels. You need to have Wi-Fi or cell connectivity to get that. The radar classic layer obviously looks a little more pixelated. It's classic, they call it. It's the older style. It's high resolution composite internet radar data for the United States, Canada, Northern Mexico, Australia, Europe. They have it for all those places. But you also, again, you need to be on an active Wi-Fi to get that. And you might have some imagery that's really old from when you took off, and it's outdated now. So.
And I think there's a great lesson here. As technology evolves and gets more, as we get more technology on board the cockpit, you have to stay up to date with everything that goes on in the cockpit. Sometimes we train pilots that haven't flown in 20 years, 15, 20 years. The gap in technology between what happened in the early 2000s and what's happening now in the mid 2020s, big difference. And if you don't understand what you're looking at, it might look pretty, like you said, but if you don't understand the differences, and so get curious, I would say, get curious about ForeFlight and all the function that it has. Read the manual, and because that one day might save your bacon. Same for your systems. You and I talked about this, your aircraft systems. You have to understand how your aircraft systems work. This is why we spend so much time and money on this VR app, because it helps you learn new systems. But this is a system. It's just a different one. It's not necessarily attached to the aircraft. It's on an iPad, but it still is a system that you need to know.
Yeah. I'm going to kudo you on that. I think knowing your systems is somewhere where is a topic a lot of people fall short. I find a CFI or a mechanic or someone you really know and go over, or go take the classes at Pilot Institute to learn the systems, study the manual of your airplane, learn how it works. I can't emphasize enough how important Greg's advice of knowing your aircraft systems is. I mean, if you're going to fly professionally, you go to one of those classes, and boy, they really hone in on the systems, because I've solved problems that I had because I knew the system well enough to understand how I could help fix it as well, or that it wasn't a big deal what was happening. But if you don't know your systems, that's for sure going to be problematic. The latency is the big problem with the NexRad. You hear it over and over again that it's late, it's history, it's bad, it's outdated information. And I just want to show a video that a friend took flying, up in the flight levels of NexRad, and this is a real-time video going from the NexRad imagery. Then it's going to go to a clock for reference. It's going to go to the real radar, onboard weather radar, and then out the window without stopping recording, without editing. If I looked at my, this on the NexRad, I would have wanted to turn left. If I look at the weather radar, you can see that would put me right into the weather if I turned left. And of course, looking out the window, there's straight ahead. And if I turn left, that puts me right into that big monster right there. And if the clouds look like cauliflower, they're going to feel like cauliflower. If they look like cotton, they'll feel like cotton. So again, looking at the timestamp, there's the weather radar and the airplane. It's ahead and to the left. And the NexRad is showing, hey, you need to turn left a little bit to avoid this weather. And that would put you right into the weather. I think that's
probably, sadly, exactly what happened in this accident at the time.
Yeah, exactly. Well, any more comments or discussion before we move on to our game show? Because it's getting time for that.
Yep. Nope. You got it. Let's go.
All right. Time for games. Game time. I'm going to play just another instructions. This is going to be fun. I hope many of you can participate in this. You're going to win some prizes, including, this, I've got a bunch of these SCHIFF Show mugs that you can win as well. That's probably should be the grand prize, right? And the shirt too. We got some polo shirts as well. Greg and Pilot Institute have donated 2 free courses for their classes, 2 courses of your choice. Go get your drone license, or if you're working on something else, even if you're just already instrument rated, I think the instrument course could really help you for IPCs and keeping current. Anyway, we've also got ASA has been kind enough to donate a FAR aim for this year. And dear old dad has donated an autographed copy of his book, from which we get a lot of these questions, 1,000 things you think you thought you knew about aviation. So those are the prizes for this episode. And of course, one polo shirt with the logo on it. Our top scorers will get that. So just to give you some instructions on how to join it, you can scan if you have a mobile device. If you're watching this on a mobile device, I'm not quite sure what to tell you. You need 2 devices. Maybe if you have another one, you can do it. But enter your name and email address, and you can enter your first name and last initial or a nickname if you want to remain anonymous. But to win the prizes, we need your email address. You might be asked to verify the email address. So this is for your security as well. So when you're ready, you can click on the green join button and get ready to test your knowledge. When it starts, when we show the questions, you'll see the question, you can read it, you can select your answer, and you can change your answer. But when you're ready, select the green send button. You'll be timed. So the faster you answer it and send your answer, the more points you'll get if you get it right. You can change your answer anytime, but remember that watch the timer, because the faster your final answer, the more points you get. And of course, you'll see the results afterwards. And then the winners and the standings will be published in my follow-up email, which should go out tomorrow or the next day. And you'll see the standings. And if you are not subscribed, then you can feel free to go ahead and subscribe to the emails on the top of the schiffshow.tv website. There's a link up there to subscribe to the emails. So without further ado, let's jump into the game show. First of all, thank you to Dad, who wrote the book where these questions are coming from. And he is the master of being full of Schiff. Got to be careful when I say that. So question 1, the number of thunderstorms that occur daily over the Earth's surface is approximately how many? Now, this is a repeat question. We've shown this on the Schiff Show before. And so this is going to be good motivation for you to maybe watch more than one episode or watch a bunch of episodes, because if you see a question again, I might throw one in there, and that's going to be a pretty quick gimme if you've seen it before. So 1,000, 5,000, 10,000, or 50,000 thunderstorms occur daily all over the Earth's surface every day. How many thunderstorms do you think we have here on Earth each day? And I'm not sure if we've got our minute. I wasn't looking at the clock. I'll give it just a little bit more time.
I'll be your clock on the next one.
Okay, yeah, give me the timer, because I don't want to give the answer before the time's up. So I think I've hit a minute. We'll gamble with that one. But the number is actually 50,000, approximately 50,000 thunderstorms every day on planet Earth. I don't know if you can believe that or not, but I think I've sometimes had to navigate around all of them in one flight.
It feels like that, right?
Yeah, especially going down to Florida or, Texas here in the spring and summer.
Yeah, half of those are in Florida, by the way.
Right. I think one of the most thunderstorms near a metroplex is Tampa. Tampa has more than any other city. I believe I'd heard that. I could be wrong, but it's up there either way. Question 2, the frequency of lightning flashes generated by a cumulonimbus cloud is an approximate measure of the thunderstorm's what? The number of flashes generated, the frequency of the flashes, like how fast it's flashing, will tell you the diameter, or is related to the height, or potential for structural icing, or is it indicative of how much turbulence is inside that thunderstorm? Did you look when we put this question up? We got to go a minute here to give everybody time.
I did. Yep.
Good. So you'll call me out on that. So the frequency of lightning flashes generated by a cumulonimbus cloud is an approximate measure of the thunderstorm's what? Diameter? Height? What kind of measurement? Potential for icing? Is there more ice if it flashes more, or is it going to be bumpier? Turbulence. One of those directly correlates to how fast
seconds
it's flashing. So some thunderstorms, you see the lightning, going just nonstop, flash, flash, flash. It's going like crazy, the frequency, how fast it's flashing. Others, you get one every 5 or 10 minutes.
All right, that's time right there.
Survey says it is turbulence. So the higher the frequency, the greater the turbulence. The lightning frequency provides a general indication of turbulence intensity. So again, if you see
what it is, Yeah,
What's that?
it's a warning. It's a warning sign. It's telling you don't come here. So that's a good way to remember it. The more flashes,
Exactly.
the more it's going to get bumpy.
Yep, look at it as a stay away light. Question 3. Tornadoes are born in the bellies of thunderstorms and most often are found in which portion of such storms? So, yes, we know that tornadoes spawn from thunderstorms. Is it the northeast, the southeast, southwest, or northwest quadrant of the thunderstorm that more tornadoes are found? And no, it's not where the trailer parks are.
Yes.
Sometimes
where the blue roofs are.
Yeah, exactly. It's not necessarily that, but it's one of these quadrants. Definitely has more tornadoes coming out of it than the other three. So
I actually didn't know that. I didn't know the answer to that question.
I didn't either. You just hang around Dad. Just go have lunch with him, and he's going to just spout these off all the time. You learn so much just
awesome.
hanging around the man through osmosis and hanging out with him. I don't know how he stores this much data in his head, but he's got a lot of this stuff.
He's got it. All right, that's your time right there.
All right. So tornadoes come out of the southwest quadrant more often than not as a visual aid in determining the safest direction of thunderstorm circumnavigation. Consider that tornadoes usually descend from rotating wall of cloud that often forms the lowest portion of the thunderstorm cloud base. So just file that one away. All right, question 4. What do the letters in the acronym radar represent? What does radar stand for? I mean, we always take for granted, and I didn't really realize until a few years ago, I think, that radar was an acronym, that actually stood for something. That I just figured it was that's what they called it. It's just a radar. It's actually an acronym. RADAR stands for something. It's either really awesome detection. What's that?
I think that's it. I think that's A.
Yeah, really awesome detection and recreation. Or is it radio distance and recognition? Is it radio detecting and ranging? Or radio distance and ranging? So
I think we should start naming technology after cool stuff like really awesome detection. That would be.
I think that would be kind of fun. It would describe the, how good that thing is. And in this case, radar is awesome. It's really old technology that they use for finding airplanes, right? For ATC to know where, but not anymore. Now they've got better stuff. ADS-B, the airplanes all know where they are. So basically, ATC is saying, why don't you just tell me where you are?
Yep.
And that's ADS-B in, instead of using the radar to bounce off an airplane. So
I think that's your time.
What do the letters in radar stand for? They stand for radio, detecting, and ranging. So you got to detect it and also determine how far out it is. And it does the same thing for aircraft that it does for weather. So the answer was C, radio, detecting, and ranging. I didn't know that till recently. And by recently, I mean a few years ago. All right, our last question, question number 5, is what is the most common mistake pilots make when using NEXRAD? And we talked about this, and I want to emphasize this because it's so important to me. But what is the most common mistake pilots make when using NEXRAD? Is the mistake that they realize it's historical data? Is that a mistake? Or is it wrong for them to use it as strategic long-range planning for like before you take off? Or C, treating it as real-time close-in tactical decision? Or is it D, getting the big picture of the weather? Is that, and remember, the question is, what is the most common mistake? What is the wrong thing? So if the 3 of these are right, that you should do with NEXRAD, one of them is what you should not do with NEXRAD. What pilots are still doing, more pilots than I can believe are doing this because we're still having accidents. And I really wish, if you're watching this, I know you guys wouldn't do it the wrong way and you wouldn't misuse this kind of radar information. Just let me know if we hit that minute.
Yep, you get there.
Okay, well, we're going to say it's treating it as real-time, close-in, tactical decision-making. That is the mistake that pilots are making. And like I said, I know none of you are doing that, but I want you to help me spread the word to other pilots that if they have this NEXRAD capability to look at this imagery in flight, please implore them and make sure they're not using it to circumnavigate or get close tactically, avoiding close-in stormage. So please stay away. The image, assuming image is live rather than recognizing it as a 5 to 20 minute old, especially for Mosaic products, using aged images. I mean, it tactically to pick your path between cells that have already moved out or grown. Remember, those holes close as well. So big mistake using it to pick your way through storms. So we'll end tonight with a quote. Nobody gets trapped by weather. There are always signs, and a safe pilot turns those signs into an early out. The first half of that was a quote by Richard Collins. I added the second part. I think that was a great one. There are always signs, and it's like you should have known. You know, in this case, the pilot in our accident tonight should have known. Greg, I really want to thank you for joining us tonight. We could have made this 2 or 3 hours, I think. The hour just flew by.
Agreed. Well, thank you for having me. This was a great pleasure, and I'm sure we'll see each other again at various trade shows and different places.
Absolutely. And I'll be watching your accident investigations and recreations and videos. And if I see another one I like, maybe we'll do this again and we'll talk about it.
Oh, that would be lovely.
Well, thanks a lot for joining us. I'd also like to thank Avemco for making this possible. I couldn't do this myself. Avemco is known for their reasonable premiums, and they work with GA pilots, and they're the biggest GA insurer out there. Make sure that, when you call them for a free quote, make sure you tell them that you're a listener of the SCHIFF Show and you watch our programs, and you'll get a discount on your premiums for that as well. Next month, we're going to have my good friend and guest, Mark Tomasich. He's a FAA senior attorney who is retired from the FAA. So now he's allowed to actually join us and talk about some of the legal aspects of things that are getting pilots into trouble. And we got a great accident to talk about. That'll be on March 12th at 7 p.m. Central Time, or anytime after that on the schiffshow.tv website. So remember, 2 speeds. You have an option to make 2 speeds, slow or screw up, and choose the first one. Go slow, methodical, take your time. So good night, everyone. Thanks for joining us.